let's get started. Scores of people from around the country and beyond will join the family of former Deputy President David Mabuza to bid him farewell. He died last week at the age of 64. Mabuza will be given full military honours at a state funeral where President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to deliver the eulogy. Newzroom Africa's team is in Mabuza's home province of Mpumalanga, where the ceremony is taking place. Quite the team we've sent out there. Iman Rapeti, Zianda Ngobo, of course, at the Mabuza home in Barberton, while Kolim Gambi and Willie Masela are in Bombela at the official funeral. But Iman, a good morning to you. Let's start with you. Talk to us about what you're seeing at the family home of David Mabuza.
Naledi, good morning to you, to Arabile and to our viewers. As we got here this morning, the cocks crowing, marking the end of the final night that David Mabuza's mortal remains get to be with his family. They've encompassed him here at the homestead in Barberton, which is about 33 kilometers away from the Barflam Hoërskool Sports Stadium, where the official state funeral category 2 will get underway later today. I can tell you that it is absolutely freezing cold. But as we know with Mpumalanga, temperatures will begin to rise shortly. And as the day sort of creeps in outside the home, we are starting to see a buildup of security personnel marking off the road. They'll be ushering people and a lot of vehicles, family, friends, community members, those who are allowed to be in this final private moment with the family beginning to make their way here. So there is quite a program set here for the home, and we'll continue to share reflections from those who are spending these final moments with the family. And Naledi, I think it's worth noting that it is a moment today for the family. We heard from the children and the family earlier this week about how they've longed to have spent more time with him. And they certainly get to have that intimacy in these final hours in the lead up to that state funeral. We will check in with Zianda Ngobo, who has been following these developments since the news broke earlier this week of the former president's passing. And Zianda, it has been a series of milestones really in this final send-off ceremony. Just mark some of the highlights for us and what we're expecting to happen outside the home this morning.
Well, certainly a more solemn kind of mood expected outside the home, unlike what took place yesterday. Of course, silence as that cortege marked its final moments as David Mabuza's mortal remains returned home. And then jubilation yesterday from those ANC members who'd actually made their way here, song and dance, struggle songs. You'll know that David Mabuza was a member of Umkhonto Wesizwe, having fought in the struggle in various roles. And this morning we expect that it will just be the family and a few who will be here to support the family. There will be a prayer service that will be led by military generals at around 7:30 inside the Mabuza home. And thereafter at around 8 o'clock we anticipate that there will be some movement. But I must say, Iman, that, you know, reflecting on just coming and following that cortege, it was quite the moment, in the sense that, you know, it dawns upon you that the mortal remains are here, the spirit is gone, and the family now who have shared Mabuza with the nation for so long are also now going to have their final moments with their loved one.
We heard so beautifully and tenderly from his children, Mxolisi and Angela, also reflecting on the fact, and his sister as well said the same thing, that they were unhappy about the fact that they didn't get to spend as much time with him. But there's also in that the realization that he was a man who belonged not only to the family, to the community, to the province, and then to the country at large. Just recap for us some of the sentiments that were shared at the memorial service.
Lots of sentiments shared. I think in the first instance, the ANC, having been the one leading the process of memorializing him, was very clear in how it closed rank and wanted to ensure that his memory is preserved in a manner that is befitting of someone who was a freedom fighter, someone who would have contributed towards the organization. From the side of Deputy President Paul Mashatile, And even those within the organization, he's known as Mr. Unity, Mr. Unity, Mr. Unity, not just for his contribution at that 2017 NASREC conference, but even before at the Polokwane conference. When we talk about the family, you've already spoken about how, they can't imagine life without David Mabuza. In particular, we must also remember, Iman, that he battled with that ill health for more than a decade. So even though, he sailed off into the sunset in 2023 to allow for Mashatile to enter into the office of the Deputy President, he was still fighting that battle. So even with the time that they would have spent with him, it would have also been interrupted by those intermittent trips to Russia, where he was seeking treatment. But also, if I could reflect on some of the other memorial services that were led by Gwede Mantashe, the ANC's national chair, and Marupini Ramokgopa, the Deputy Secretary General, talking about what the ideal cadre is. And I think that's important when we talk about the ANC understanding the space that the organization finds itself in, brand ANC, and as they memorialize and remember Mabuza, what to take on in terms of the baton going forward.
And a complicated history, as a lot of his friends shared. Even Deputy President Paul Mashatile reflected on that, speaking to people like Peter Nyoni yesterday, who were one of the people who were in the Save Mpumalanga march, who were critical, highly critical of David Mabuza. Basically, that relationship evolving into one where he was handpicked to serve in his administration here in the province. And that is a recurring theme we've been seeing over the last few days. People saying that he was the unifier. And people like Peter Nyoni yesterday telling us that it is one of the attributes most needed, especially by the ANC in this moment. Let's continue then to reflect on his impact here in the province. And I know you have a guest waiting for you as well.
That's right. And before I bring in our next guest, Muzi Chirwa, who's the ANC provincial spokesperson, that speaks to the political mastery of David Mabuza, isn't it? Because we're told that this is actually how he was able to tame his would-be political opponents. And Muzi Chirwa, the provincial secretary of the province, I want to pick up on that note, because it's the political sophistication, mastery and complexity, some would say skullduggery, of David Mabuza that made him such a towering figure in Mpumalanga, isn't it?
Very much agreeing with you that Comrade David Mabuza was not a person who will always speak when there's no need. But at a point when he will speak, his words will strategically guide the entire organization in terms of taking important and relevant decisions. But of importance was his strategies of how he attempted to unite the ANC, right from his ascension as the chairperson of the province in 2008, throughout up until he was elected the Deputy President of the ANC. We've seen that he has always promoted unity among members and unity among the leaders of the ANC, even in times when it was difficult, when we were electing the leadership of the NEC.
Let's talk about how we are going to move forward this morning. Yesterday, we were, of course, together at the B3 mortuary, where, of course, you were carrying the ANC flag, which we understand his casket will be draped in before the party hands over to the military for those honors. Just take us through the process.
Yes, indeed. This morning, the mortal remains of the former Deputy President is here in the households. The leadership of the ANC, the top 7, supported by the leadership of the MKLWV, leadership of the province, the chairperson of the province, Comrade Mandlovu, and members of the PC. They will support the family by making sure that the coffin is draped, and then the flag of the ANC will be undraped at a particular point in time and be given to the family. It is expected that at 7 o'clock, there will be a short service in the household, prayers and so on, and that will be done up until 7:30. Then there will be a transition from the ANC ceremony to the one of the SNDF or the army. We will then take the process up until to the war school Berflam. Then the service will continue at that point from 9 o'clock onwards.
Let's talk about ANC traditions and how you say goodbye to someone who was a soldier of Umkhonto weSizwe, and what that kind of tradition means, not only to Amasosha Umkhonto, but also to ANC members who would understand the kind of discipline and meaning of having your casket draped with an ANC flag.
Yes, the draping of the casket by the ANC flag, it means the member has remained loyal, disciplined, selfless and hardworking for the movement and for the people of the country. Then it also symbolizes that this person that we are burying here has been a leader of note in the movement. Hence, the coming of the MKLWV will then render a salute to the late Deputy President Comrade David Mabuza as an honor to him.
Muzi Chirwa is the provincial secretary here in the province of the rising sun, Mpumalanga, and as the sun really does begin to rise this morning, so will the spirit of David Mabuza. And Iman, you would have heard there from Muzi Chirwa, reflecting on the meaning of having a casket draped in an ANC flag. It's not an honor that's afforded to just anyone.
It's not lightly bestowed. I really wish we could have shared with our viewers this beautiful vista, Naledi and Arabile to our left of the skyline here, just lit up in flames almost as the sun begins to rise. And it is a new day. It's a new day for a family that will have to continue their lives without their husband, without their father, without their brother, a son of this province. And it is, I guess, in some ways, a celebration of a life that, to the people that we spoke to, was a life that was certainly well lived. Naledi, Ziyanda, again, talking about the disparate views on David Mabuza, the complicated life that he had, we constantly invoke his moniker, the cat, a political survivor, a person who was able to reinvent himself. I think it's worth reflecting on that aspect of his character again.
I mean, you were speaking about someone like Peter Nyoni. There are many in the province. I can think of Lucky Ndinisa, who during the lead up to the ANC's Mpumalanga provincial conference in 2022 was able to convince people to move onto his side. And that was his ability to read the room. Lindiwe Njali, by the way, wasn't also initially an ally of David Mabuza. She's now the Deputy Correctional Services Minister, but she also served as provincial secretary here, initially being on opposing sides. And that's why I think he was called Mr. Unity. His ability to reincarnate was best displayed, as many have told us, and you and I would have observed, in 2017. No one, and I mean absolutely no one, anticipated that Mpumalanga would be the province that would tilt the scales in favor of our now President Cyril Ramaphosa. He firmly secured Ramaphosa's ascension to the union buildings, and what then informed Mabuza's thinking around changing course, not only the course of the ANC, but the course of the country in essence. And that was the essence of the cat. No one saw him coming. No one ever knew his moves until the very last minute. And until then, you would then be able to see what he was thinking and how he was going. I mean, interestingly enough, yesterday I managed to interview someone who was a delegate at that Nasrec 1 conference. And I asked, well, what was the instruction? What were you told, And they were told, name and surname is unity, unity, unity. And they kept that discipline. So that tells you the level of respect that David Mabuza commanded. Yes, there were rumors that he could be defecting, but at the time, and as Ace Mahashule, who was part of the Premier League himself, admitted, he'd spoken to the then President Jacob Zuma, who had said, yeah, I'm hearing these rumors, but we still trust this man. He is reliable. So that was the cat. Many lives and no more as we stand outside his home this morning.
And there's a project left as the ANC begins to renew itself. I know in some quarters it might be an unfortunate metaphor. Peter Nyoni again going, because it was a really great conversation we had with him yesterday, likening David Mabuza to a snake. one who's able to move by stealth, one who is able to camouflage, one who, when they strike, can strike effectively. And those are the attributes that he extrapolated in invoking that particular metaphor. Mpumalanga has to be restored to its former glory, he said, of being one of the most formidable blocks of support that the ANC enjoys countrywide. And again, the absence of this idea of unity, particularly in the run-up to the elections last year, certainly this province has its work, and its executive has its work cut out for it in restoring and perhaps even exceeding the impact that Mpumalanga had in terms of bringing the numbers that the ANC needs back again.
Absolutely, and the leadership has conceded that. In the same way, even the top 7 officials have conceded, Iman, that Didi Mabuza was concerned about the state of the organization, so much so that he had requested that someone like Nomvula Mokonyane Mtumsenintuli come to this very Barberton home to strategize. Don't just start campaigning next year. Begin your 2026 local government election campaign in earnest now. Operation Litsima, go out there and speak to the people. Certainly Mpumalanga was one of the better performing provinces, of course, in last year's election in terms of their electoral outcome. But as you've said now, it's not quite where Mpumalanga used to be, especially when David Mabuza was at the helm. So what needs to happen is something we've asked. Well, taking over the baton and allowing yourselves to compete when there is a contest, but coming back together and working for the good of the organization. So reduce the squabbles, gather and rally around one cause, and go back to the people. I mean, it's one thing to go back to the people, but the credibility of the organization is another. And that's something we've also reflected on with the Secretary General of the organization, because what we've seen, especially during local government elections, is how what happens at a national level has an impact on the electoral outcomes at a local government level. You'll remember even when there was, at the peak of load shedding, ANC was punished at the polls because of that, even though that was significantly a national issue. So these are some of the things that the leadership of the ANC in Mpumalanga need to contend with.
And Zianda, certainly those recollections will form part of the theme of those who have been sent to the province to officiate this final send-off. We also know that there is a delegation from Russia that will be here. There is a delegation from Eswatini. The Deputy Prime Minister representing King Mswati III will also be here as the Category 2 state funeral gets underway. And the scene has been set, certainly, for that to take place. Kholi, good morning. You and I were there until late yesterday at the Bergvlam Hoërskool, or the Hoërskool Bergvlam Stadium. I hope that you've practiced saying Bergvlam this morning. I know you had some trouble yesterday. But it is a stadium that can take 3,000 people. And as we were shared with by the head of the GCIS yesterday, William Beloy, it is a restricted access venue. So just tell us a little bit more about what's happening there and whether all of those people working hard last night have managed to put those finishing touches together. You and I met a woman by the name of Grace, who was putting together the bouquets, the floral arrangements for today's meeting. She seemed excited, and really it was an important role that she was picked to play as part of these proceedings too.
You're absolutely correct, Iman. In fact, you've encapsulated everything that we observed yesterday. Very good morning to you. And as we speak right now, those final touches still being put on, and I'm just going to step away for a moment so that the viewers can see what we are able to see from our vantage point here. The marquee that you're probably seeing on your screen right now, that is where the dignitaries are going to be stationed, including the mourners. They are going to be stationed there. And as you've mentioned, we have a Russian delegation that will be here. And we're also going to have the Deputy Prime Minister of Eswatini representing King Mswati III. And in a short while, Iman, we are also going to take you to the gates of this particular Bergvlam. It's Bergvlam War School. And this is where the funeral service is going to be taking place. And the person watching the space for us at the main entrance, as you've mentioned, it is a 3,000 capacity sports field. It can only accommodate those people. And Wole Masilela is stationed there. He is going to talk to us about what he is seeing thus far. But let me talk to you then about some of what you have reflected on with Ziyanda Ngobo a short while ago, and that is to reflect on the man, David Mabuza, the shrewd political operator, as many have described him, a man who moved in silence, but when he decided to rise, he rose with precision. Let me talk now to my colleague, Vuyo Mvogo. He is with me this morning. Vuyo, good morning to you. Those descriptions about David Mabuza, the shrewd political operator, a man who knew how to use power, whether for good or bad. How do you think the country, and indeed his home province, is going to remember him as he is sent off today?
I think more than anybody else, it is the ANC that will remember David Mabuza, perhaps more so than the country itself, because he was a larger-than-life politician, but he made, I reckon, the most profound impact on the organization itself. You will recall, as the so-called Premier League, they changed the course of the ANC in so many and profound ways. Enigmatic as he was, for the most part, but the operator he was meant that he changed the course of the ANC in many fundamental even ways. So it's quite the end of an era, especially considering the fact that the so-called Premier League is now actually no more. Ace Magashule is outside of the ANC. David Mabuza has now passed on. Supra Mahomabilo is a chairperson of a committee in Parliament. Post Polokwane, which was quite an era for the ANC, those were the people who actually, of course, together with the former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, they did indeed change the course of the ANC. One could say for better or worse, but change they did.
Indeed. Vuyo, you mentioned the Premier League and Ace Magashule sitting outside the ANC today. On the day of David Mabuza's passing, I remember speaking to him. In fact, we were seated together in studio whilst he was joining us virtually and reflecting on 2017, because I suspect that's what many people now are going to ascribe to the legacy that he leaves behind, that perhaps the country owes him a debt of gratitude for turning the tables at that ANC conference where Cyril Ramaphosa would be elected as president. Do you think that former President Jacob Zuma has moved on from that period? He himself, by the way, sits outside the ANC today, having formed his own political party. And I'm merely asking this question, Vuyo, based on what Ace Magashule said, and that is that period, 2017, was politics, but there was nothing personal. Do you think that former President Jacob Zuma also looks at things the same way, that it wasn't personal, it was just politics?
I'm not too sure if he actually has it in him to move on, especially when you people in politics would say with regards to epoch-making events. I honestly doubt if he would move on from that period, especially when you consider the things he's been saying since about his successor, Cyril Ramaphosa. Only this week, people have been talking about invisible hands in what General Mkwanazi has been able to do over the past week. and how much or who else may well be players or, at the very least, beneficiaries of what has happened over the past week. But let's go back to your question. Former President Jacob Zuma is someone who is set in his ways in so many respects. Whenever he speaks, whenever he gets to reflect on the past, you feel it. You hear it in his voice. You see it in his face, how strongly he feels about things, particular events that involve how he would want to be remembered or how he would want history to judge him. And the Mabuza episode was meant to be, in so many ways, a continuation of his legacy, but also how he sees the ANC in particular, but the country broadly going forward. Whether or not you agree with him is for him neither here nor there. But how he would have wanted to shape the future of the ANC and, of course, of the country was disturbed in large part by one DD Mabuza. And I don't think he's someone he would forget. Not that easily.
Very quickly, do you think he would show up here to say goodbye to David Mabuza, or he's still stuck in 2017?
I don't think he would show up.
Yeah. Vuyamvogo, these are conversations that we are going to have throughout the day here up until the very last moment, and that is when David Mabuza is laid to rest in a private ceremony. Once again, we have got to remind you that the family, we have been told that is going to be a private send-off with limited capacity, again, as opposed to, I suppose, using the word restrictive. It's limited capacity because he is going to be laid to rest in a private cemetery, we understand. Well, let's try and get a view now from what is happening at the entrance of this particular facility where this funeral service is going to be taking place. And watching the space for us there is Mweli Masilela. Mweli, good morning to you. What are you seeing at this time? We were told that people have got to be seated by 8 o'clock.
Yes, indeed, we were told that people should be settled by 8 o'clock, but by the look of things at the present moment, what we are seeing on the ground is that there is a lot of security personnel at this stage. But of course, we've seen some buses coming through, and indeed, there are some people who are already starting to make their way into the sports field. And this is the venue where the open or public funeral service of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza will take place. And you can see on my right where these people are heading, it's the marquee where President Cyril Ramaphosa will be making that eulogy. And also what is important at the present moment is that government, as well as the African National Congress, the party of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza, has made all means necessary to ensure that ordinary citizens have access in terms of sending those messages of condolences and comforting the Mabuza family. We've seen those 3 memorial services held in different regions of Mpumalanga, that is Nkangala, Ehlanzeni, as well as Hartsibande. Those are the regions that Mabuza knew very well in terms of the work of the ANC as well as the work of government. Of course, as we are discussing the issue of politics, Vuyo, as well as Xoli, what the most important thing also on the ground is the voices of the ordinary citizens. For example, yesterday we went to a filling station next to the home of the former Deputy President David Mabuza, and when you listen to those people, they are saying that he touched their lives in many ways, and they will tell you about some of the stories when you came to that filling station to fill up the tank, how he would give them some hefty tips, and they appreciated very well. When you go to different villages ages, senior citizens actually appreciating the role he played in as far as the building of houses is concerned, and also the school nutrition program as well as scholar transport in remote areas, saying that their children are now able to get an education because of the work that he has done on the ground. But of course also leaders of the province here in Mpumalanga, as we have heard Ziyanda Ngobo, my colleague, speaking to the Secretary of the ANC, Muzi Chirwa, in the province, they are acknowledging that Mabuza played a critical role in shaping their politics as well as their approach in as far as leadership is concerned. Also actually saying that he was very decisive in as far as implementing government policies is concerned. People have mentioned that he was also paying special focus also on municipalities, cracking the whip on those mayors who were not actually doing their job as expected, because he's someone who believed that the provision of basic services such as water and electricity is concerned. Those are things that shouldn't be compromised. Even from his home village of Paula, we had an engagement with community members here, just highlighting some of the things he has done. In fact, they actually said he was one example of a leader who said charity begins at home. Dilapidated schools in that area, for example, Mzimba Primary School, that is the school where he attended at primary level, and he made sure that that school is renovated to become one of the best facilities in that particular area. Also hearing from people who actually taught him in class, having that conversation to say that he actually exhibited those leadership skills at a very young age, as much as some do say that they never expected that he will be a deputy president coming from that particular area. So as the funeral service is expected to get underway at around 9 a.m., we're expecting some of those people who are coming from his village and other corners of Mpumalanga to actually pay their last respect. And from the side of the family, we heard that they are happy with the manner in which government and the party that David Mabuza belonged to actually handled this matter after the passing of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza.
Thank you very much. Watching the space in the entrance of the Bergvlam War School. This is the venue of the funeral service for the late Deputy President David Mabuza. Well, as Mweli hands back to me, the shot you are seeing right now is daybreak, and how beautiful is what you are seeing right now. The moon is still up as day breaks here. It is biting cold. Mweli Masilela making a few observations about some of what the people have been telling us throughout the few days that we have been covering the story around the passing of David Mabuza. I just want to also reflect on some of what we have heard. For example, people saying that the DD Mabuza I know is not the one that many speak of in newspapers. I know DD, the human being. Another person saying he wasn't just a politician, he was one of us, a son of the soil who never forgot where he came from. And that is why the people of this province have been reflecting, and essentially they are in mourning because they have lost, they feel that they have lost a human being who loved them and saw them for the human beings that they are. And that is why it is going to be quite sad for some of them who will not be able to come here today because of the limited capacity of this particular sports field. Only 3,000 people, as we continue to mention, are allowed inside here, but they have been able to attend those memorial services throughout this province that were held as a way of them saying goodbye to David Mabuza. Well, let me hand it back to Naledi and Arabile in studio.
Well, thank you so much for that then as well. And of course, rolling coverage, as we can tell, then across the board there with the Man and Ziyanda Mgambi with Vuyo Mvoko there, as well as Mweli Masilela indeed. So some interesting permutations, some interesting stories as well actually coming through from this as well. And I thought it was very interesting how Vuyo also spoke just about the relationship with the former president, Jacob Zuma, as well, and how that was really important. Of course, you had the Premier League, which is such a pivotal part of recent times and recent elections, and how that's gone away for the most part then in the stature in which we knew it. And I think it's so critical to understand that dynamic, because that dynamic gives a sense of who David Mabuza was politically, right? And just how shrewd a politician he really was.
I'm thinking about just on X, the sort of posts that you would have seen, you know, paying tribute to him, and the Gauteng Premier Banyazali Sufi getting onto X, and this is what he's written: master, forever master, tactician, forever the struggle continues. And I think it just talks to, you know, that recognition of who he was as, again, a tactician. I remember just after 2017, and this is where, you know, there was a lot of interest into who the deputy president at that point of the ANC really was. So many questions. Who is this man?
Yes.
That is, you know, changing the way that the ANC is doing things, certainly coming out of that elective conference. I remember reading about this individual who plays chess with himself. You know, and it speaks to the sort of...
It tells
you so much. And, you know, reports of this man who religiously studies the Sun Tzu's art of war, and you saw it in his political strategy.
How incredible it is to be able to play chess with yourself, and the kind of learnings that you actually are taking from that, right? It's not just learning rules, but you're tactically trying to find weaknesses in yourself.
Yes.
So that if anybody else is trying to do the same,
you see it coming.
You 100% see it coming. And again, it goes so much to the shrewdness of the man, right? And I know we're talking about this and lamenting on it quite vehemently, but the reason for that is because it defined so much of what we knew of him.
Yeah.
And once he got into office, it felt like that had perhaps stepped away a little bit. But it was really in that campaigning, in that 2017 sort of time span, that we saw possibly the most pivotal parts of David Mabuza then as well. So really significant when it comes to the character traits there is then of David Mabuza as well.
Absolutely,
We're going to actually head back to the, I think it's the home then in Barberton. As you can see from some of our pictures there as well, outside of just the marquee, we're also showing the family home in Barberton where Ziyanda Ngobo and Iman Repeti are. And we believe we're going to be speaking to Ziyanda Ngobo as well, as the funeral cortege is now just arriving as well. Ziyanda.
Well, Arabila, I wouldn't say it's the funeral cortege. It's actually the arrival of the SANDF officials and military officials. You'll see at the gate, as my colleague Max Slotolo shows you, this is the gate that will be used to actually exit the mortal remains of David Mabuza and bound for Hoërskool Bergflam, where the Category 2 state funeral will be taking place. You can see them getting out and in their full military uniform. So we were told, of course, that at 7 o'clock there will be a prayer service inside the Mabuza home, where there will be prayers for the family and other leaders who will be with the Mabuza family, and shortly thereafter the mortal remains of David Mabuza will leave his Barberton home, bound for that venue where our colleagues Xolo Mngambi, Vuyomvok and Mweli Masilela are currently at. And we expect the program to get underway at 9 o'clock sharp. We know that because this is a state funeral and not an official funeral, there is a difference between the two. With this one, there will be full military colors. Such a funeral gets all the benefits for befitting of either a former deputy president or a current deputy president. So this is what David Mabuza qualifies for. So you can see then the flag, the South African flag, being held by one of the SANDF officials. That will be the flag that ultimately will be handed over to the Mabuza family once all the official proceedings have actually concluded. You'll recall we did say that in the first instance, his casket will be draped in the ANC's flag. That is the political home of David Mabuza. And he is also being accorded such by his organization. And as Muzi Chirwa explained, it's something that is accorded to someone who was loyal, disciplined, and served his organization. And thereafter, the ANC will hand over to the military, where they will then take over, especially once the cortege makes its way from here in Barberton. You'll also see Matepo Sedat. She works in the current Deputy President's office, but she also used to work with David Mabuza quite closely when he was also a Deputy President in the communications space. In fact, we did speak to her earlier yesterday, where she reflected on how, you know, he was a quiet person, a man of very few words. And you'll see that the GCIS is also here. They would have been managing the communication from the government side. And I'm trying to prod Matepo Sedat to come and speak to us quickly. You're live on Newzroom Afrika, Matepo. Just tell us what's taking place. We see the military officials are here. There's going to be a short prayer service at around 7 o'clock.
Indeed, Zianda, you know, it is a state funeral, and it's a full military complement, and that is what you have just witnessed here.
And if you could just tell us, I know you might not know the exact rankings, but you know, just some of the details. People sometimes don't know the difference between a state funeral and an official funeral. I mean, this is the second state funeral that we've had since the dawn of democracy. The last one that this country saw was during the late statesman, former President Nelson Mandela, and of course, F.W. de Klerk's family opted to have a private burial. But what is the fundamental difference?
The difference between a state funeral, category 2, that is for a deputy president or an acting deputy president, and a former deputy president, as is the case with, in this case, with former deputy president David Mabuza. And that means that the military takes over, unlike with an official funeral where it will be the SEPS that takes over. So that is the difference that takes place. And you would know that the state really is responsible for all that is going to be taking place, including the funeral service, which will take place at the Hoërskool Barflam, and then a burial later back here at the farm in Barberton.
And your final reflections, as this is the moment that I won't say that one is waiting for, but it's the moment of reckoning, as you will.
It indeed is, and I think as the day progresses, it will get emotional. You know, when we remember the former deputy president and really the contribution he has made for this country, and I think all the plans have been made, and they really are going to unfold. And when that happens and we hear the speeches, it really is, like you say, going to be a moment of reckoning. And you know, we hope that all South Africans will appreciate the deputy president in a different way by hearing all the things that the people will be saying about him today.
Matepo Sedat, thanks for allowing me to ambush you a little bit. Of course, I took some liberties there because I know that she worked very closely with David Mabuza, and you can see that her levels of service and servitude towards Mabuza and his family are still firmly in place, explaining the fundamental difference, of course, between a state funeral and an official funeral. So the military is taking over in this instance, and we know that she also had a personal relationship with him as someone who would have been, you know, liaising with him into the early hours of the morning about communication strategies. And let's bring back our very own Iman Rapeti. As you can see, there's a lot of movement at the gates of the Mabuza home.
Certainly, and we're showing our viewers those pictures now as things begin to ramp up for the departure from the home, sadly, for the family, to Barflam Hoërskool Stadium. I was thinking about, again, going back to the family and the reflections from the younger sister, Zandile
Yes.
Mabuza, yesterday. In fact, at the memorial services, just saying how unfortunate it was that they had to hear from social media
Yep.
that he had passed. We know that David Mabuza was the 6th of 12 children